Even though I rarely use homebrew character content, I've never struggled to make any character concept come to life in 5th edition. I recently asked the community to submit builds that they had had trouble realizing in 5th edition rules, and one member actually stumped me. Until I realized that the constraints that they were putting upon me in creating this character had nothing to do with the character that they wanted to play. And that perhaps there was a principle there that if people understood it would help them to create the characters of their dreams with fewer roadblocks. What they were asking for is a shapeshifter. They wanted to make sure that this shapeshifter was able to transform many times a day, up to and including even being able to do so mid-round, so that they could be in one form as they leapt into position and then switch into another to deliver the killing blow. They envisioned this character very similar to, say, Beast Boy from Teen Titans in the DC universe, and they thought that this would be a load of fun, understandably. However, the restriction that they put on there was that it should have absolutely no spells or spell slots, which immediately meant that they did not want to play a druid. At this point, with these kinds of restrictions, cutting classes out, and the need to do things that don't seem to be available in the rule set, the modern answer is, of course, that it is homebrew time. Now, there's tons of options for this kind of thing at the moment. In fact, the number of options for choices of homebrew is so wildly huge in the modern era that you pretty much don't have to build anything yourself. If you were to go and do a search for homebrew shapeshifting class, you'd probably find 5 or 6 different options already built out there for you by well-meaning DMs, by Kickstarters, or on things like Patreon. And that does make a lot of sense that those are options that are out there for everybody, but that comes with a couple of unintended risks, because while this might come as a shock to everybody, the most well-intentioned of dungeon masters, myself included, is far from perfect. And we have far less resources at our disposal than do massive gaming companies that are trying to put out a solid, unified, and balanced product. And so when we homebrew ourselves something, or we pull it off of some other DM's homebrew, including organized Patreons and Kickstarters, we're running the risk that when we slot it into the game, that there will be unintended consequences inside the system. Sometimes that means that things are just a little bit too strong, or they might be a little bit too weak, but generally speaking, we just don't have the design chops and experience to be able to make sure that everything we put out is as good as it should be. Which doesn't necessarily mean that we won't put out something amazing, just that we can't trust that it's always going to work out that way. There are a lot of things that can be created that don't necessarily need to. But the principle that I often use in character creation, and didn't realize wasn't a common thing, is that I like to just leave the rules exactly as they are and reimagine what those rules in play looks like. It's a common thing done by dungeon masters in order to create new monsters or to avoid any metagaming that might be bothersome to the DM, to take a creature that already exists and just put a different skin on it. By taking, say for instance, a regenerating troll, a classic that everybody is used to encountering, and ripping the skin off of that and instead making it a bubbling ooze that sloughs forward and bludgeons things to death and regenerates surprisingly fast, you essentially have created a new monster, even though you may have taken the stat block exactly as it is and only made a few tweaks, like slashing becoming bludgeoning on the claw attacks, and that the creature type is no longer giant but might be ooze. But with only those basic changes, the creature has changed completely to where players will not recognize what it was before. In this case, there's almost no homebrewing that is needed to be done, and pretty much no unintended consequences that are going to pop up, because you're using the system as it was intended and the rules as they were already written. And this is a concept that players and dungeon masters in collaboration can apply to character creation. And so that's the trick. The trick is to switch your thinking, and instead of trying to figure out how to make the mechanics that fit exactly the character concept you're looking for, instead think about how to create the character that you're looking for in the most broad mechanical sense and apply a new skin to it that brings it closer to your imagining of the finished product. The truth of the matter is that character constraints don't need to break the mold of the game when you can adjust the flavor of the mechanics in order to match what you've got in mind. So for the Beast Boy build, you can immediately open up a world of opportunities when you take away the restriction against the Druid class. There's tons of different options here, but what if you just reflavored a Moon Druid into the Shapeshifter subclass? Verbal and somatic components in your spells now become war cries or call-outs of the form that you're going to use or any other part of the shapeshifting process. Spells now become forms that you can utilize, and you just simply reflavor every one of those spells, and you pick the spells that make the most sense. Casting Enhance Ability, as an example, might be something that bulks you up and increases your strength and size as you add musculature in order to enhance your strength. Or you might add feline traits as you increase your dexterity. It could have visual repercussions that aren't listed in the rules in order to make that spell into a shape-shifting ability. And for multiple forms and around, not only do spells with instantaneous durations fit the mold perfectly, but you can also realize that if the only difference in how you deliver an attack is the descriptives that you go through to get from the beginning to the end of the attack, all you need is DM buy-in, and you can reflavor all of the narration of your attack and keep the mechanics exactly the same way as they were. In other words, the pouncing cat using the tiger stat block transforms in order to leap across the distance and then transforms back to deliver a slashing blow is essentially a tiger moving and then attacking. The fact that you're moving while in a different form, well, that's just narration that requires the DM to say, yeah, sure, you can have pretended that you changed forms there from a mechanical standpoint, and in the world you have indeed just performed that task. And if you want more options in terms of different ways of transforming, then start slapping on some levels in some other shape-shifting options. A few levels of the Path of the Beast Barbarian spring to mind, and taking the Shifter or perhaps a reflavored Simic hybrid race will give you lots of different options for strange things that normal people can't do, but your shapeshifter can. In the end, just remember that there are very few concepts that are out there that can't be made with this principle of reflavoring instead of trying to homebrew out the mechanics to fit your original mechanical view of the character. If there are concepts that are coming to your mind right now that you don't think can be done this way, drop them in the comments and let me workshop it, and let's see if perhaps you're right and you do need something homebrew. But in the meantime, thank you for watching all the way to the end of the video. You're awesome. Thanks for watching, and happy adventuring.